The sound of rain echoed across the glass ceiling of the penthouse like a requiem. High above Seoul's glittering skyline, a man sat perfectly still in a leather wheelchair that cost more than most people's annual salary. His posture was straight, shoulders squared in a dark tailored suit, legs unmoving beneath a gray wool blanket. His name was Han Ha-jun, and once upon a time, the world called him the generous king of Korea. Now, they simply didn't know what to call him. The tabloids had tried the broken billionaire, the CEO who vanished, tragedy behind the empire. But the man in the chair did not care. He did not read them. He had no reason to. The world only loved what it could use. And Ha-jun had nothing left to offer it. He turned his chair slightly to face the window. Far below, umbrellas floated like lily pads in the rain. Ordinary people going about their ordinary lives. His jaw tightened. Once he had joined them. Not in poverty. He had never known that. But in hope. In faith. In believing that goodness mattered. That kindness counted. But what did it get him? A car crash that shattered his spine? A wife who left the moment he couldn't stand? A boardroom that whispered behind his back? A world that prayed when he gave, then forgot him when he bled. He wasn't angry, no. He was done. Mr. Han, came a voice from the hallway. The Tokyo investor call is in 20 minutes. Shall I bring your notes? Ha-jun didn't turn. Email them. I'll review alone. Yes, sir. Silence returned. Always silence. Except for the rain. His fingers curled around the armrest. He had built everything. The hospitals, the scholarships, the orphanage in Busan. Millions of dollars poured out of his accounts to help people he'd never meet. He remembered one girl writing, "Thank you for my new legs, CEO Nim. When I walk, I'll think of you." He never wrote back. What was the point? He couldn't walk. Why should she think of him? His phone buzzed. A message from Min-sik, his lifelong friend and COO. "You still alive up there, Hyung? Want to come down and yell at some people?" "It's been a while." Ha-jun smirked faintly, the only smile he'd managed all day. Min-sik didn't pity him. That's why he stayed. Still, he didn't reply. Let them wonder. Let them manage the empire. Let the stockholders panic. What good was being CEO if he couldn't even climb the stairs to his own boardroom? He rolled toward the antique shelf near the wall. A Bible sat there, untouched, spine stiff with dust. He had once read it every morning. Blessed are those who trust in the Lord. That was before he trusted, and the Lord let the car flip. That was before he prayed for healing and woke up paralyzed. That was before his wife looked at him and said, "I didn't sign up to push you for the rest of my life." She had cried when she said it, but she still left. That night, Ha-jun stopped reading scripture. He didn't tear the Bible. He didn't curse God. He just closed the book and never opened it again. The elevator pinged. "Chairman Han," said Min-sik, stepping in. "Thought I'd find you brooding. Again." Ha-jun didn't look. "You still call me chairman. I don't even run the board meetings. You still pay everyone's salary, including mine. You could run it from this chair and still beat them all." "Then why don't I?" Min-sik frowned, tugged at his suit sleeve, then crossed the room. "You're punishing God," he said quietly, "for what humans did." Ha-jun turned slowly. His face didn't move, but his eyes narrowed. "Get out." Min-sik didn't move. "You can fire me tomorrow. Today I'm staying." Ha-jun looked away. "She wasn't worthy," Min-sik continued. "Your wife. And you know it. And the world's unfair. You already knew that too. But now you're acting like goodness doesn't matter anymore, just because it didn't buy you a miracle. I didn't need a miracle, Hajun whispered. I needed someone to stay. Minsik's jaw clenched. He said nothing. The rain grew louder. After a moment, Hajun added, I'm tired, Minsik. Tired of being kind. Tired of giving. Tired of pretending I still believe in anything. A pause. You're still breathing, Minsik said. That means God's not done with you yet, whether you believe or not. And then he walked out. That night, Ha-jun sat alone again. The rain had stopped. The city lights blinked back at him, unaware of the man in the chair who once lit up the world with kindness. He wheeled to the shelf again, stared at the Bible, didn't touch it. Instead, he stared at his reflection in the window. He didn't look like a man anymore. He looked like a legacy that had lost its meaning. Somewhere, in another part of the city, a woman named Diana stepped off a plane, laughing with her best friend, suitcase in hand, shoulders straightened, hope buried deep beneath her no-nonsense stare. Ha-jun didn't know it yet, but the story wasn't over. God was already writing chapter 2. He had given the world everything, but maybe what he needed now wasn't to give more. Maybe it was to receive what he never thought he deserved again. Love. The plane touched down in Incheon with a soft jolt, and Diana exhaled. Not because the flight was over, because everything else was. 20 years of trying to be small, 20 years of folding her opinions, dimming her light, cooking love into meals she was never thanked for, tithing faith into a marriage that slowly swallowed her whole. Done. Her wedding ring had long since found the bottom of a drawer in Washington, D.C. Her last name was her own again. Her shoulders stood tall, no longer weighed by the fear of disappointing a man who never clapped when she bloomed. Beside her, Kalani, her loud, bold, Hawaii-born best friend, bumped her arm with a grin. Girl, are you smiling? Is that an actual smile? I'm adjusting to oxygen, Diana said dryly. Kalani rolled her eyes. You're not just adjusting, you're being reborn. South Korea better get ready for us. Or rather, for you. Diana glanced out the window. Seoul's lights winked in the distance like 1,000 little second chances. I'm just here to breathe, she said. Nothing more, nothing deep, and definitely no men. They took a taxi to the little serviced apartment Kalani had found weeks prior. Clean, modern, 2 bedrooms, close to the subway, close to a coffee shop, and more importantly, close to freedom. The air outside was crisper than back home. Diana paused beneath the soft neon glow of the street signs. There were no memories here, no ghosts, no expectations, only her. And maybe, for the first time in 2 decades, that was enough. The next morning, Kalani shoved a green smoothie at her and plopped a laptop onto her lap. You're brilliant, Di. Corporate consulting is your jam. Let's get you a job. Temporary, simple. Use your brain, not your heart. Diana sipped the drink suspiciously. Is this celery? God made it. Drink it. Now, let's find a job. I told you I came here to rest. You said that yesterday. You'll be bored by Thursday. Diana laughed despite herself. Kalani was right. She could rest and rebuild. She wasn't built to sit still, but she was built to never settle again. Okay, she sighed. 1 application, something low stress. I'm not looking to climb corporate ladders. I want to live without being watched like a hawk. Kalani scrolled. Temporary consultancy contract. 3 months, flexible hours, high compensation. Sounds shady. Let's click it. Diana peered over her shoulder. What's the company? Kalani raised a brow. Just says H Group. H? Kalani shrugged. Sounds vague and powerful. That's either really good Or a K-drama waiting to happen. Diana chuckled. Well, let's pray it's just boring. Elsewhere in Seoul, Han Ha-jun reviewed the new internal hiring list from his wheelchair without emotion. Most of the temp hires wouldn't cross his path, but something made his eyes pause. Diana M. Thompson, a consulting analyst with 20 years experience, American education, and a resume that read like steel wrapped in silk. No high-profile roles, no media appearances. A woman who had clearly done brilliant work quietly from the shadows, unassuming, unattached. No press, no photos. He didn't know why, but her name stayed in his mind longer than the others. Ha-jun set the file aside. He'd never meet her anyway. Back at the apartment, Diana had just hit submit when Kalani squealed. Wait, hold up. H Group, Ha-jun Han's company? Is this that billionaire? Diana looked blank. Who? Kalani spun her phone around. A photo of a striking man in a wheelchair filled the screen. Dark eyes, sharp jaw, quiet sadness. Used to be super philanthropic. Built a children's wing in Busan. Got in an accident. Wheelchair bound. Recluse. Divorced. Rumor is he doesn't speak to anyone. Kind of fine, though. Diana blinked. I applied to his company? Kalani nodded slowly. You did? Diana held up both hands. Let me be clear. I'm not going there to fix anyone. Not emotionally. Not spiritually. Not romantically. I'm done with projects. I'm not a missionary for broken men. Kalani leaned back smugly. That's cute. Too bad God rarely sticks to our personal policies. Diana glared. No. Men. Aloud. Kalani just smirked and took another sip of her celery smoothie. We'll see. Diana receives an email 2 days later. Subject: Your application has been accepted. Assignment begins Monday. She exhales. One more step into the unknown. Meanwhile, Ha-jun can't sleep that night. Not because of pain, but because of the strange sense that someone is coming. Someone who will interrupt everything. Diana didn't know it yet, but the man she was determined to avoid was the reason God brought her to Korea in the first place. The marble lobby of H Group was a masterpiece of silence and steel. Sleek walls, polished floors, minimalist grandeur. Everything whispered order. Diana stepped through the rotating glass doors in a cream blouse, tucked into wide-leg navy trousers, curls pinned in a loose bun, her silver cross necklace catching the morning light. Her heels clicked, confident. She carried no fear, only purpose and boundaries. Her eyes swept the space, taking it in. Every line was clean. Every employee she passed bowed slightly and moved with robotic grace. She could already tell. This place didn't run on emotion. It ran on power. Perfect. That meant she could remain invisible. Upstairs, Ha-jun sat in the executive conference lounge, silent. A board meeting had just ended. Words were still echoing in his head. The stock dip, the investor from Tokyo, the chairman should speak more publicly again. He wasn't listening. Something was off. Something in the atmosphere had shifted. He wheeled himself toward the hallway window, the city stretching far beyond. The noise of the meeting dissolved. And then he heard it. A voice, warm, confident, American, laughing softly. He turned. From the far side of the glass wall, he saw her. She stood near the assistant's desk, glancing over paperwork with an easy smile. Not trying to impress, not trying to perform. A woman in her own rhythm. Ha-jun couldn't see her face fully, but he felt the pull. Strange, subtle, peace. It slid into the room like warm sunlight after a storm. His pulse didn't race. His chest didn't tighten, but his thoughts paused, just paused, for the first time in months. Diana handed back the clipboard with a polite nod. Thank you, she said in soft Korean, her accent graceful but deliberate. She then added in English, Y'all really do love your paperwork. The younger intern behind the desk blinked at her. Ma'am? She grinned. Never mind. The girl smiled timidly. Diana turned to head to her assigned floor, her eyes catching a glimpse of a man in a dark suit near the hallway window. Broad shoulders, strong jawline, wheelchair. She didn't flinch, didn't stare. Instead, she gave a respectful nod, the kind you give a stranger in a hotel lobby. Then she walked past. Ha-jun watched her go, stunned. No pity, no whispering glance, no awkward smile of forced cheerfulness. Just dignity, as if his chair wasn't the loudest thing in the room, as if he were still a man. He didn't even realize he was gripping the chair's armrest until Min-sik strolled in from the elevator. Hyung, you look like you saw a ghost. Ha-jun blinked. Who was that? Who? That woman who just walked past. Min-sik squinted toward the elevator bank. You mean the temp analyst? Diana something? Ha-jun turned sharply. Diana. Yeah. New hire. 3-month contract. Supposed to consult for the philanthropy division. I was going to introduce you later. Ha-jun looked back down the hallway. She was already gone, but the air hadn't reset. Something had changed. Subtly. Unequivocally. Meanwhile, on the 17th floor, Diana stepped into a modern, sunlit workspace. Sleek desks, a quiet hum of diligence. No one looked up. She liked it already. A young HR associate showed her to a private desk near the window and dropped off a company handbook. If you need anything, let me know. We usually don't see new hires straight away. The CEO doesn't like being disturbed. Noted, Diana replied with a pleasant smile. She had no interest in meeting another powerful man anyway, especially not one who could afford this view. Later that afternoon, in a hidden corner of the building, Ha-jun sat alone in the private prayer garden he had built years ago, back when he still believed prayers could change things. But today, something stirred. He found himself repeating a name aloud, quietly. Diana! As if tasting it. The rustle of bamboo leaves answered back. No voice from heaven, no thunder. Just the name on his lips, lingering like a question. Diana exits the elevator, coffee in hand, humming softly to herself. She rounds the corner and nearly bumps into Ha-jun's wheelchair. Unaware it's him. Their eyes meet. His, steady and unreadable. Hers, polite and professional. She steps aside gracefully. My apologies, sir. Ha-jun tilts his head. You're the new consultant? Yes. You treat everyone like that? Diana raises a brow. Like what? Like they matter. She holds his gaze. Should I not? A pause, then a faint smile, not from charm, but surprise. No, Ha-jun says. You should. He turns his chair and glides past her, and Diana watches him go, not knowing she just met the man who will shatter every no she ever said. She didn't know much about the CEO, but he knew without a doubt that he would remember her, long after she forgot their first meeting. 3 weeks. That's how long it took for people at H Group to start whispering about the man in the chair. Smiling again. Not in meetings, not for cameras, but in those quiet, unguarded moments when no one was supposed to be watching, and always when she was near. Tuesday, 9:04 a.m. Ha-jun arrived early as usual. The halls were quiet, predictable, until he heard it. That voice again. Low, warm, unhurried. It doesn't make sense to slap your logo on a campaign about healing when you never show the people you've helped. Healing needs a face. People don't connect to numbers. They connect to stories. Silence followed. Then a murmur of agreement from the other side of the glass. Ha-jun slowed his chair just outside the small strategy room. There she was again. Diana, standing by the whiteboard in black slacks, her arms folded, chin lifted slightly. She didn't argue like a person with something to prove. She spoke like someone who'd already been through fire and didn't flinch around heat anymore. She was the only person in the company who didn't tiptoe around him. In fact, she didn't even know who he was yet, so he thought, and somehow that made her voice sound even more honest. Later that night, Ha-jun slept. Not deeply, but longer than 20 minutes. No nightmares, no phantom pain, no waking up drenched in cold sweat. Just a quiet drift into sleep. Like his mind had finally found a room with no mirrors and no ghosts. Thursday, 3:17 p.m. Minsik barged into the penthouse lounge and narrowed his eyes. You're wearing different cologne. Ha-jun didn't look up from the charity report. So that means you're aware of how you smell. You haven't been aware of anything except board votes and painkillers for 6 months. I was out of the old one. Liar. Ha-jun turned a page, unbothered. Minsik smirked. It's her, isn't it? Silence. Ha-jun tapped his pen once, then again. She's different, he said finally. She listens, but not to flatter, and she doesn't treat me like a patient. Minsik plopped down on the couch across from him. You smiled yesterday. I was thinking about something amusing. You haven't found anything amusing since 2023. Do you ever go away? Minsik leaned forward, suddenly serious. Whatever this is, don't push it away. Just don't. You've been grieving in slow motion for 2 years. Maybe, he exhaled, maybe God's sending something to break the silence. Ha-jun didn't answer, but he didn't deny it either. Meanwhile, Diana was organizing data sheets in her office when her hands froze over the keyboard. That feeling again, like a whisper at the base of her spirit. Not words, not audible. Just that quiet stirring she'd learned to obey. Don't run. She closed her eyes. God, I told you I came here to heal. I didn't ask for this. I'm not ready for another story, especially one with a man carrying that kind of weight. She sighed deeply. Ha-jun had never spoken more than a few polite sentences to her, but he didn't have to. It was in his eyes, the way they followed her when he thought she wasn't looking, the way his posture straightened when she passed, the way his silence wasn't cold, just watchful. She had seen men like him before, but she'd never felt peace around one, and that scared her, because peace wasn't supposed to be attractive. Peace was supposed to be safe. Friday afternoon. A flower delivery arrived at Diana's desk. Not roses, not orchids, nothing romantic. Just a small white-potted jasmine with a handwritten note tucked inside, for the one who reminded the wind how to be gentle again. No name. Diana stared at it. Her fingers brushed the leaves. Then she opened her desk drawer, pulled out her prayer journal, and wrote in bold, honest strokes, Lord, I know what you're doing, and I know what I said, but if you really sent me here for more than just healing, please make sure I don't forget what I survived to get here. Ha-jun rolls into the prayer garden just after sunset. The sky is a watercolor of deep blue and ash gold. Wind stirs the bamboo leaves. He closes his eyes, and for the first time in years, he thanks God, not with words, not yet, just with a long, steady breath. Neither of them knew what to call it yet, but for the first time in a long time, peace had found a place to land. The elevator doors slid open with a soft chime, and Diana stepped out clutching a folder to her chest. Her pulse raced faster than it should have for a Tuesday. She told herself it was the caffeine. It wasn't. It was him, Ha-jun Han, the man in the chair who somehow made the whole floor feel like it had a heartbeat. The man whose voice could slice through silence, but never through peace. She had spent the entire weekend praying to shake off the pull she felt whenever he looked at her. But God, in his perfect sense of humor, had decided to make Monday arrive anyway. Ha-Jun's office was minimalist. Dark wood, brushed steel, and floor-to-ceiling glass overlooking the Han River. Everything was in order, except for him. He sat at his desk, reviewing figures on a tablet, his sleeves rolled up just enough to reveal strong forearms and a faint scar near his wrist. One she always noticed, though she'd never dared ask about. "Miss Thompson," he said, his voice smooth but unreadable. She stepped forward. "Good morning, Mr. Han." He motioned toward the seat across from him. "Sit." She obeyed, setting the folder down. His gaze flicked briefly to the cross pendant resting against her blouse, catching the light. His expression softened for half a second, before he masked it again. "I've read your project proposal," he said. "The board believes the foundation's outreach in Busan has been too quiet. They want to make a show of charity." She tilted her head slightly. "But you don't." His eyes met hers. "No, I believe in impact, not applause." Something in her chest tightened. "Then why am I here?" He leaned back in his wheelchair, studying her carefully. "Because you understand what quiet strength looks like. And because—" He paused as if choosing the next words cautiously. "I trust you to tell the truth, even if I don't like it." Diana blinked. "You trust me?" "You're still here after 3 weeks. That's rare." Her lips parted, but no sound came out. Then he added, his tone softening, "I'm assigning you to oversee a private proposal, not under the foundation's name, just mine." Diana frowned. "Personal philanthropy?" "Personal redemption," he corrected quietly. She studied him. "You don't have to redeem yourself, Mr. Han. You've done enough good to fill 100 lifetimes." His jaw tightened, but his voice stayed even. "You don't know me, Miss Thompson." "Maybe not," she said softly, "but I know guilt when I see it." That made him look up. For a moment, their eyes held, long enough for both to feel something shift. It wasn't attraction. Not exactly. It was recognition, like two wounded souls quietly realizing the other carried a matching scar. Later that night, Diana sat at her small kitchen table, the jasmine plant from before blooming quietly beside her laptop. Her friend Kalani was on a video call, eating noodles and smirking. "So let me get this straight. He personally asked you to work with him?" "It's just a project," Diana said, typing fast to avoid eye contact. "Uh-huh, and I just eat ramen for the sodium benefits." "Kalani, girl, don't even. That man is interested. He's my boss." And Noah built a boat, but that didn't mean he wasn't chosen for something big. Diana rolled her eyes. "That's not even biblical context." Kalani grinned. "Still true, though." After the call ended, Diana closed her laptop and sat in the quiet hum of her apartment. For the first time in months, she prayed with trembling honesty. "God, don't do this. Please. I came here to heal, not to feel. I'm not ready to open my heart again. And I'm definitely not ready for a man who can't even stand on his own legs." Her voice cracked at the last sentence. The guilt hit immediately, because she didn't mean it cruelly. She meant it protectively, of herself, of him, of the fragile peace they'd both just started to find. The next morning, Diana entered the top-floor conference suite, her hair swept up neatly, expression calm but composed. Ha-Jun was already there, reading a report. "Good morning," she said carefully. He didn't look up. "How's the jasmine doing?" She blinked. "You know about that?" A faint smirk tugged at his lips. "Let's say I like to make sure my investments are well cared for." Her heart stuttered. "You sent it?" "Maybe." He met her gaze then. "You seem like someone who waters everything but herself." Diana froze. her throat tightening. That's not your concern. No, he said gently, but it should be. Their eyes held again. The air between them shifted. Thick with unspoken truths neither dared touch. Finally, Ha-jun cleared his throat and rolled toward the screen at the front of the room. I've arranged for us to visit one of the Busan outreach centers together. You'll evaluate operations on site. We leave Friday. She blinked. We? Yes. I may not walk, Miss Thompson, but I still move. Something about the way he said it made her pulse race. Not in pity, but in awe. This man who had every reason to give up was still finding ways to stand taller than most. She gathered her folder quickly. Understood, sir. I'll prepare the itinerary. Good, he said, then softer. And Diana. She paused in the doorway. Ha-jun looked up at her, eyes warm but unreadable. Don't fight what brings you peace, he said quietly, even if you don't understand it yet. Her breath caught. She didn't respond. She simply nodded, stepped into the hall, and pressed a hand against her chest until the elevator doors closed. That night, Ha-jun sat by his window, wheelchair angled toward the skyline. For the first time in a long time, he didn't feel angry at God. He just felt grateful for the quiet voice that had walked into his company and started rearranging his silence. She prayed not to fall, and he prayed not to hope. Yet God was already answering both in the same breath. The rain was soft that evening, more mist than downpour. As the van rolled gently into the gravel lot outside Haven Outreach Center, Busan. Diana stepped out first, umbrella in hand, adjusting her scarf against the sea breeze. The center stood perched on a quiet hillside, lights glowing through its windows like warm promises. It was smaller than she expected. Humble. Real. Behind her, the van door slid open, and Ha-jun emerged in his custom wheelchair, wearing a black coat, no tie, and a blank expression. But his eyes, they weren't cold. They were watching her, like she was a lighthouse he hadn't meant to find. Inside, they were greeted by a chorus of excited staff and two kids who practically skidded across the linoleum to hug the Ajushi CEO they hadn't seen in a year. Ha-jun smiled tightly, patted their heads. You've grown. You haven't, one of them said brightly, giggling at his chair. He chuckled, actually chuckled, and waved them off playfully. Diana stood to the side, heart warming at the scene. There was still something soft in this man, buried, but alive. They spent the next hour touring quietly. Diana took notes, asked thoughtful questions. Ha-jun observed her more than the center itself. By the time the visit ended, the van was parked at a scenic overlook nearby. One Ha-jun used to stop at years ago, when he could walk, when he could think, when he still believed God answered prayers. Now he sat motionless in his chair, facing the ocean, the city lights twinkling behind them. Diana stood beside him, her arms crossed, wind brushing through her curls. He broke the silence first. I used to pray right here. She turned, surprised. Here? He nodded slowly. Every time I came to check on the foundation's work, I'd pull over, walk down that slope, talk to God like a friend. She said nothing, just listened. I'd pray for the kids, for the staff, for the company, for strangers on the street. He paused, jaw tightening. His voice dropped. And then I'd get back in my car, drive off, go home. Diana shifted her weight slightly, letting him breathe. Ha-jun continued. Then came the crash. A foggy road, a blind curve, steel slicing into steel. Silence. The doctor said I might walk again someday. Then they said I wouldn't. Then my wife said she couldn't stay. His knuckles whitened against the armrest. And God? He said nothing. Diana's eyes filled. I'm sorry. No, he said flatly, eyes fixed on the water. You don't get to be sorry for him. Not if he's as good as you say. She walked around slowly and stood in front of him. Ha-Jun. He met her eyes. Wounded. Raw. I did everything right, he whispered. I gave. I served. I opened hospitals. I wrote checks for people I'd never meet. I begged God to use me. And when I needed him most, when I needed just one miracle, he disappeared. Diana knelt, placing her hand on the armrest of his chair. God didn't abandon you, she said gently. The enemy attacked you. He frowned. She leaned in closer, her voice a whisper of truth. The moment you became a light, you became a target. And when your body broke, the enemy thought your spirit would too. But look at you. You're still here, still giving, still fighting. His breath caught. It wasn't God who walked away, she said. It was pain that clouded your vision. A long silence fell between them. Then Ha-Jun asked, his voice shaking, Then where was God, Diana? She looked up at the stars blinking faintly through the mist. He was right there, she whispered, crying when you couldn't, holding what shattered, waiting in the silence. She paused, then added, And he sent me here to tell you. He never stopped being near. Ha-Jun blinked fast, and for the first time in years, he felt something burning behind his eyes that wasn't bitterness. It was grief finally finding its voice. They said nothing for a long time. Then Diana stood slowly, brushed her hands against her coat. I'm not trying to convert you, she said quietly. You already knew God before I walked in. I'm just here to remind you of what your pain tried to erase. She turned to go, but he stopped her. Diana! She looked back. Ha-Jun stared at her like she was something he didn't know how to name. I didn't ask for a therapist or a preacher. I know, she said softly. I didn't ask for this either. A pause. His next words came slow, measured. But I think I needed a witness. She smiled gently. Then maybe I'm not here by accident. Busan's sky was unusually still at night. No city hum, no echo of traffic. Just the quiet pulse of a billion lights and a billion lives, and one woman on her knees, whispering prayers for a man who didn't believe in them. Diana knelt in the small prayer garden, nestled behind Ha-Jun's hilltop Busan residence, a space he'd built years ago and long since abandoned. Bamboo trees swayed gently above her. The air was sharp with spring chill, and yet she didn't move. A candle flickered beside her Bible, open to Psalm 34, verse 18. The Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit. Her stomach growled faintly. She hadn't eaten all day, not out of neglect, but choice. She had been fasting for 3 days now. Not for a promotion, not for peace of mind, for him, Han Ha-Jun, the man who made her laugh when he didn't mean to, the man who carried his pain like armor, the man who had unknowingly stirred her spirit when she'd sworn she was done with men entirely. She didn't even know what to call what she felt. It wasn't romantic, not exactly. It was intercession wearing human skin. God, she whispered into the wind, I know he's angry. I know he's tired. But if you brought me here, then please, reach him. Even if he never sees you in me, let him feel you through me. A soft tear fell on her open Bible. She didn't wipe it away. Across the property, Ha-Jun had been awake again. Insomnia had become a nightly visitor, though lately it came with less venom. He was adjusting to this new pattern of peace and confusion. It had been 2 days since that night on the cliff, when Diana's words broke something in him. Not his pride, but his silence. Tonight, he rolled toward the window, restless, the soft hum of his wheelchair breaking the stillness. Something caught his eye outside, a faint glow, movement among the bamboo. He frowned. Was someone there? Then he saw her, kneeling, still, head bowed. Diana. Hajun hesitated, heart thudding for reasons he couldn't name. He didn't want to interrupt her, but something deeper, something he hadn't felt in years, drew him out. He wheeled quietly down the sloped path toward the garden, the sound of the tires whispering through gravel. She didn't notice him until he was almost beside her. The candlelight brushed his face, revealing the softness in his eyes, the same eyes that once burned with anger toward heaven. "Miss Thompson?" he said gently. She looked up, startled, then smiled faintly. "You should be asleep. I could say the same to you." She exhaled a laugh. "Touché." He tilted his head. "You're fasting, aren't you?" Her brow lifted. "Who told you that?" He gestured toward her open Bible. "No one reads at 2 a.m. unless they're chasing peace or losing it." Diana smiled. "Maybe both." A pause. The air felt alive, like heaven itself was leaning closer. Hajun studied her face, the faint shine of tears on her cheeks, the trembling breath she tried to steady. Then, in a voice that wasn't defensive, only broken, he asked, "Why are you praying for a man who hates God?" His words hung in the air, not cruel, just naked, honest. Diana's hands rested lightly on her knees. She didn't look away. "Because," she said softly, "I think you're the reason I'm here." His jaw tightened. "What does that mean?" "It means," she whispered, "that God didn't send me here for a new job, or a fresh start, or even healing for myself. He sent me here for you." Hajun blinked. "You can't know that." She smiled through quiet tears. "I didn't, until I started praying and couldn't stop." Her voice trembled now, but it didn't falter. "You think God left you, Hajun, but he's been chasing you. Every sleepless night, every quiet breath, even your bitterness. It's proof you still care about him. You only hate what you miss." The words hit deep. He looked away sharply, swallowing hard. The truth stung, because it was alive. "You don't understand," he said, voice low. "You don't know what it's like to believe so hard that the ground gives way beneath you anyway." Diana moved closer, kneeling beside his wheelchair. "No, I do." He turned to her, and there it was, the soft strength she carried everywhere, the unspoken story in her eyes, the pain she never paraded, but wore like testimony. "I know what it's like," she said, "to beg God to fix something that never got fixed, to love people who left anyway, to build a life that collapsed in your hands. I know." Tears threatened him now, hot and unfamiliar. "Then how do you still believe?" Diana's smile was faint but sure. "Because I met the kind of love that doesn't change with circumstance. You think God failed you. I think he's still fighting for you." Silence settled between them, sacred, thick with grace. Then she reached out, her hand hovering near his, not touching, just close enough that the warmth bridged the distance. "Hajun," she said softly, "it's okay to let God back in, even if it's just a whisper." He stared at her hand, trembling. For years, he'd refused comfort from anyone, therapists, doctors, pastors. But tonight, something in her voice cracked the walls. He didn't speak, didn't move, just lowered his head and wept. Later that night, Diana sat on the garden bench, arms wrapped around herself, eyes fixed on the candle still burning by the Bible. Hajun had gone back inside, quietly, gratefully, but before leaving, he'd said something she would never forget. "I don't know if I can believe again." "You don't have to," she told him. You just have to let him love you again. Now, as dawn painted the sky in pale hues of mercy, Diana whispered one last prayer. Thank you, God, for tears that mean the heart's still alive. Inside, Hajun sat by the window, face buried in his hands. For the first time in years, he didn't feel alone. He glanced toward the garden. Diana's candle still burned. That night, one woman's prayer broke through years of silence, and one man's tears became the sound of heaven entering again. Back in Seoul, Ha-jun returns to his penthouse. He rolls toward the antique shelf near the wall. The Bible is still there. He doesn't open it, but he dusts it off and sets it on the table in front of him. Then whispers, barely audible, if you're still listening, I'm ready to try again. The man in the wheelchair didn't know it yet, but the God he thought had left him was already writing a comeback, one chapter at a time. The moon hung low over Seoul, casting silver shadows on the rooftop garden of H Group's private executive tower. It was silent, except for the hum in Diana's chest. She wasn't supposed to be here. Not this late. Not with him. Not with her emotions pulling tight across her ribs like a corset she never asked to wear. But Hajun had asked. Just 10 minutes, he'd said. And something in his voice told her it wasn't business. She found him there, seated in his wheelchair near the edge, facing the city as though it were a confession he hadn't made yet. He didn't turn when she stepped out, didn't speak, just waited. And somehow, that silence, his silence, was louder than anything. I didn't know this was up here, Diana said softly. Hajun finally looked at her. His face was unreadable. His eyes, not. You needed somewhere quiet, he said, and I needed to see you. That made her pulse falter. She stepped closer, the wind catching her curls as she came to stand beside him. Why me? She asked. There are dozens of women who would love to catch your attention. Younger, shinier, Korean. His gaze didn't move from her face. Because they didn't look at me the way you do. She swallowed. How do I look at you? He didn't hesitate. Like I'm still a man. The air shifted. Diana's chest rose with a slow inhale, but her words came out clipped. Don't do this, Hajun. I have to, he said quietly, before it's too late. She turned her face toward the city. You're lonely. I get it. And I've been kind. But this isn't... Isn't what? He interrupted, voice steady. She looked at him sharply. Isn't God's plan? Hajun tilted his head. What if it is? Her eyes narrowed. Don't say that. Why not? Because I already prayed not to feel this way. Her voice cracked, not loud, but raw. And I do. And it terrifies me. He stared at her, not blinking, not breathing. I'm falling for you, Diana. 3 seconds, then 6, then 10. She looked away, hard. No, she whispered. Don't say that. I already did. Tears burned her eyes. You don't know what you're asking. I just started to rebuild myself. My ex, he didn't hit me, but he tore me down in 1,000 invisible ways. I spent years being the strong one, and I told God I wouldn't hand my heart to a man again until I knew it was safe. Ha-jun rolled closer, slowly, deliberately. He didn't touch her. He didn't beg. He simply said, then let me show you something. She turned toward him, arms crossed tightly, heart in pieces behind her ribs. And that's when he reached out. Not to her face, not to her waist, but to her wrist. The very wrist she had once yanked free from her ex's controlling grip in a hotel lobby back in D.C., the night she decided to leave for good. A place she never spoke about. A wound she never mentioned. But Hajun didn't need the story. He saw the shadow of it every time she flinched when someone reached too quickly. Now he took her wrist gently, reverently, and lowered his head. He pressed a kiss, not of desire, but of healing, right to the inner skin where the bruise used to be. Then he whispered, "You're safe with me." Her breath shattered. Something in her tried to pull back, but something deeper, something older than fear and stronger than defense, held her still. Her heart didn't know what to do, so she turned, quickly. "I have to go." He let her go. No pleading, no chase, just a nod. But as she reached the rooftop door, hand shaking on the handle, his voice came again, quiet, certain. "Diana," she froze. "Don't walk away from the one thing that didn't break you." She turned, and the way she looked at him, that tear-streaked gaze, strong but trembling, was more intimate than any kiss they could have shared. She walked back slowly, no words. She simply stood before him. He looked up, and this time she placed her fingers on his wrist, soft, unspoken. "I'm still afraid," she whispered. "I know," he said, "but I'm not here to fix you." "What are you here to do?" His voice shook now, just slightly. "To love you without asking you to shrink." They sit side by side in silence, city lights flickering like heaven's heartbeat in the distance. No more pretending, no more running, just stillness, sacred, undeniable. It wasn't a kiss that changed them. It was the truth that came before it. The headline hit Seoul like a lightning bolt. Billionaire CEO in quiet relationship with American Christian consultant. Sources say she's not Korean, not industry, and not staying. It was everywhere before 9 a.m. Hajun saw it before his driver even pulled up. The photo was grainy, taken from the rooftop garden's distant security angle. No kiss, no embrace, just presence. Two people, close, too close for business, and Diana's silhouette, bold, unmistakable. By 10 a.m., the board had convened an emergency meeting. Ha-jun didn't wait for their questions. He entered the boardroom in a navy suit, crisp white shirt, no tie. His wheelchair made no sound as he rolled to the head of the table and parked like a general at war. 12 board members, 4 investors joining via screen. The room smelled of money and nervousness. "Let's not waste time," Ha-jun said. "You've all seen the article." Director Seo, sharp-jawed and sharper-tongued, cleared his throat. "We've received calls. Major clients in Busan, Tokyo, even a few partners in Singapore. They're concerned." "About?" He blinked. "Optics, reputation." Another board member, a woman in her late 60s, adjusted her glasses. "This is a global brand, and your relationship is attracting the wrong kind of attention." Ha-jun raised an eyebrow. "Because she's black? Because she's Christian? Or because she's not you?" A heavy silence. One of the investors from the screen muttered, "This isn't personal, Mr. Han. It's structural risk." Ha-jun leaned forward. "No, it's bigotry dressed in spreadsheets." Meanwhile, Diana sat in a private lounge 2 floors below, unaware of the battle above. Until Minsik entered, tight-lipped, and placed a cream-colored envelope on the table in front of her. "What's this?" she asked. He didn't sit. "An offer." Her eyes flicked open wide. "A payoff," Minsik added, from 2 of the board members. Quiet, untraceable, generous. How generous? Enough to make you forget you were ever here. Diana stared at the envelope. Her hands didn't move. Minsik finally exhaled. "They think you'll take it." "And what do you think?" she asked, lifting her gaze. "I think?" He paused. "They're underestimating the wrong woman." Her smile didn't reach her eyes. "They always do." Back upstairs, Voices were rising. We've protected your legacy, Chairman Han, CEO snapped. But this woman, this outsider, she's not just a PR risk. She's changing you. You've stopped attending elite conferences. You've backed out of strategic alliances. I've started living again, Hajun interrupted sharply. Stunned silence. I sleep at night now. I laugh again. I trust my instincts. And all of that, every drop of it, returned the moment she walked in. A murmur moved through the room. She is not a threat, he said, voice calmer now. She is the answer to a prayer I was too bitter to pray. And if my personal peace threatens your investment portfolio, then I suggest you start divesting. Director Seo narrowed his eyes. Then consider this your warning. This relationship will bring consequences. Ha Jun leaned back, cold steel in his voice. Then I welcome them. Later, Diana found him alone in the upper-level atrium. Seoul stretched behind him in glass and gold. He was quiet, hands folded in his lap. You knew it would happen, she said. He nodded once. They offered you a payout. Yeah. Did you take it? She stepped forward. Do I look like someone who can be bought? His jaw clenched. No. You look like someone I'm terrified to lose. Her voice softened. Then don't ask me to go. I'm not. Then stop apologizing for me behind closed doors. His eyes met hers. I'm not apologizing for you. I'm fighting for you. Silence stretched. Then she stepped closer. They're not wrong, she said. I'm not Korean. I'm not high society. I don't belong in your world. His hand moved slowly, hesitantly, to rest near hers on the glass railing. No, he said. You don't belong in my world. Her heart dropped, until he added, You are my world. She couldn't breathe. Ha Jun. I won't ask you to stay if God tells you to go, he said, voice steady. But if you're willing to walk through the fire with me, I promise you'll never walk alone. Her throat burned. I didn't come here to fall in love. I didn't sit in this chair to rise again either, he said. But here we are. Diana sits alone that night, hands clasped around her Bible. She prays, not for escape, not for protection, but for courage. The penthouse was unusually quiet that morning. Too quiet. Minsik felt it the moment he stepped into the executive lounge. A shadow in the corner. A scent. Designer perfume. Too floral. Too intentional. And then, her voice. I see some things haven't changed. Minsik froze. Ji-ah, the ex-wife. She stood by the floor-to-ceiling window, arms crossed, silk scarf tied perfectly around her neck, her posture as polished as ever. She hadn't aged much. Still beautiful, still cold. What are you doing here? Minsik asked, eyes narrowing. I'm here to see Hajun, she said smoothly. We never really had closure. Minsik snorted. You walked out after the accident. You took the prenup and ran. Jia turned slowly, unbothered. And yet here I am. Don't you believe in second chances? Before Minsik could answer, the elevator dinged, and Hajun rolled in. He saw her instantly. Didn't flinch, didn't pause, just stopped. Jia smiled faintly. Hello, Junie. His voice was quiet. You don't get to call me that anymore. They sat across from each other in the private lounge, the air thick with unresolved history. Minsik stood nearby like a silent guard dog. Jia crossed one leg over the other, her hands folded delicately. I heard the news, she said. The headlines. The woman. Hajun's eyes remained cold. So you came to criticize me? I came, because I realized I never truly said sorry. His brows lifted slightly. Sorry for what? Leaving when I couldn't walk? Or pretending you were the victim when I was the one in the hospital? She sighed, like it was all too heavy. I was scared, Hajun. I didn't sign up for that kind of future, but I've grown since then. I've gone to therapy. I've prayed. He blinked slowly. Now you pray? Yes. Her voice softened. I even forgave you. That did it. His eyes narrowed. You forgave me? She nodded. For pushing me away. For choosing your pain over our marriage. Minsik shifted. Hajun didn't move. Let's try again, Jia said softly. For real. No boardroom tension. No pity. No past. Hajun's voice was calm. Too calm. You didn't come here to apologize. You came because the media made me human again. And you don't want anyone else loving a version of me you couldn't break. She blinked. That's not true. I don't need your truth. I lived it. Meanwhile, Diana entered the building for a strategy session. She was 5 steps from the executive floor when a voice called her name. Diana Thompson? She turned. Jia stood by the elevator, smiling. She knew who it was instantly. No need for introductions. You're prettier than the photos, Jia said lightly. But I guess filters do lie. Diana didn't blink. You must be the ex-wife. Jia stepped closer, the picture of composed elegance. I understand what it's like to be drawn to him. He has that presence. But trust me, it's exhausting long term. All that trauma. Diana smiled politely. Thank you for your concern. I just don't want you to waste your time, Jia continued. He still wakes up screaming some nights. Still doesn't let anyone help him get dressed. Still shuts down if you talk about the accident. Are you trying to warn me? Diana asked. Or convince yourself? Jia's smile faltered. Diana stepped closer, calm as a summer breeze. Let me save us both some time. You didn't come back because you love him. You came back because someone else does. And that makes you uncomfortable. Jia stiffened. You think I'm intimidated because you wore the dress first, Diana continued, her tone never rising. But I'm not here for what you abandoned. I'm here for what God is rebuilding. The silence was deafening. You're not angry he's moved on, Diana said quietly. You're angry he's healing. And you're not part of it. Jia's jaw twitched. You're not the right woman for him. And yet, here I am, Diana replied, turning toward the conference room with dignity. Upstairs, Ha-jun sat in silence for a long moment after Jia left. Then Minsik finally asked, You okay? Ha-jun looked toward the window. I felt nothing. That's good, right? It's holy. That evening, Diana found a note slipped beneath her office door. Handwritten. She came. I saw. I didn't flinch, because I already know who I'm standing for now. H.J. She held the paper against her heart, breath catching. She didn't ask for this, didn't chase it, didn't want it. But God had woven it in anyway. The past knocked on his door, but it was grace that answered. The air in the boardroom was colder than usual. Not because of the weather, because of the war. 12 board members, 4 senior advisors, 3 major investors on screen, and 1 man in a wheelchair who looked more powerful than any of them. Ha-jun wore no tie today, just a clean black suit, open collar, and something in his eyes that said, This time, I'm not negotiating. Just hours before, Diana had tried to talk him out of it. She met him near the garden, where the cherry blossoms had just begun to fall. They'll vote you out, she warned softly. Ha-jun looked at her with eyes full of peace. Then I'll walk out with honor, because this time, I know who I'm walking toward. She reached for his hand, fingers trembling. You don't have to do this. Yes, I do. He cupped her wrist, the one he'd kissed, because when a man finds what he prayed for, he doesn't let a boardroom take it from him. Now, he willed himself to the front of the table, didn't wait for permission, didn't ask for silence. He commanded it. Let's be clear, Ha-jun said. You're not debating my leadership. You're debating my love. Seo cleared his throat, expression tight. This is about optics. No, Hajun replied coolly. This is about control. The woman beside him shifted uncomfortably. The shareholders are alarmed, Chairman Han. A relationship like this, public, interracial, religiously controversial, brings questions. Hajun smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Then let me answer those questions. He turned to face them all. Yes, I am in a relationship with a black woman, a Christian, an outsider, a woman who challenges me, who doesn't care about my wealth, and who dares to speak truth into silence. He let the words settle like thunder. She didn't chase me. I pursued her, and I found something in her that none of you ever gave me. Peace. A murmur rippled across the table. So here it is, he said. If loving a woman of faith and integrity disqualifies me from this position, I gladly step down. Gasps. Two investors on screen cut their cameras immediately. I won't sit in this chair, he continued, and pretend that business means more than conviction. I won't build empires on silence and compromise while forfeiting the only thing in my life that feels truly aligned with who I am now. Seo stood abruptly. You're throwing away your name for her? Hajun's voice was calm. No, I'm becoming the man that name never deserved until now. Outside the boardroom, Diana sat in a small private lounge, eyes closed, fingers pressed to her open Bible. God, please protect him from the fallout, she whispered. I'm asking you to stand with him in it. The door opened. She turned. Minsik entered, slow, eyes unreadable. She stood immediately. How bad was it? He paused, then smiled. He scorched the room. Later that evening, Ha-jun returned to his penthouse quietly. No security escort, no assistants, just him and the man he refused to stop becoming. He wheeled into the main room. She was there. Diana, standing by the window in a long cream coat, hands clasped, waiting. Their eyes met. And in that moment, everything unspoken became clear. He came to a stop in front of her. I meant every word, he said. I know. They might strip my title next week. Then I'll love you without it. He reached for her hand. She let him take it. I didn't stand for you in that room, he whispered. I stood because you reminded me how to stand. Later, Ha-jun sits beside her on the rooftop, stars scattered above. He closes his eyes. I thought I was losing everything, he says quietly. But I think I'm finally becoming who God was trying to build all along. She leans her head on his shoulder. No titles, no press, just purpose. He didn't just fight for her. He believed again because of her. The fallout had been swift. News of Ha-jun's boardroom declaration flooded private investor channels by noon. By evening, the public still hadn't heard. But those who mattered already knew. Han Ha-jun had chosen love over legacy. There were whispers of panic, rumblings of succession. Corporate vultures began to circle, eager to feast on the space he might leave behind. But Ha-jun, he was still. That afternoon, he sat in the courtyard of H Group's rooftop lounge, wind brushing against his sleeves. A single white lily lay in a vase before him, silent. Minsik approached, hands in his pockets, expression unreadable. Ha-jun didn't turn. Here to tell me I've sunk the ship. Minsik didn't answer right away. Instead, he dropped a folder onto the table. Ha-jun glanced at it. Investor projections. But the red line didn't drop. It climbed. What is this? Minsik smirked. A shift. Investor Kim Jun-sook just announced he's backing you. Fully. And privately offered to absorb any losses the other partners threaten you with. Ha-jun's eyes widened. Jun-seok? He's the most conservative of them all. Apparently he was moved. Min-sik shrugged. His daughter watched the leaked footage, said, and I quote, "That's the first time I saw a man put his heart where his mouth is." Hajun exhaled. Min-sik sat down beside him. "You're not losing your title, Hyung. Not today, not tomorrow, and not like this." A long silence followed. Hajun finally asked, "You stood with me?" "Always," Min-sik said, "even when you stopped standing for yourself." Meanwhile, Diana sat alone in the prayer garden, hands trembling slightly over her open Bible. She had read the same verse 5 times and still couldn't retain it. Her heart wouldn't sit still. Hajun had put it all on the line, and though he hadn't asked her for anything in return, her soul knew she had to respond, not just with love, but with faith. She closed her eyes. "God, I see what you're doing. I see how you're redeeming him. But he's still scared to believe you care. So meet him tonight. Not through me, not through investors, but through you. Show him that choosing love didn't cost him legacy. It fulfilled it." That night, Ha-jun returned home after midnight. The penthouse was dark, the city glowing beyond the glass like heaven blinking. He wheeled into the private garden behind his home, and there, beneath the branches of the willow tree where he once told God to go silent, Diana waited. A candle flickered on the stone bench beside her. "Why are you here?" he asked softly. She looked up at him. "To pray." His voice cracked slightly. "I've already said everything I needed to say." "Then let's say nothing," she replied. "Let's just sit with God together." He rolled closer, parked beside her. She reached out and took his hand. There was no speech, no miracle, no sign in the sky, just 2 hands joined, and the sound of a man's soul, quietly returning home. Minutes passed, then something shifted. Hajun placed one hand on the armrest, the other on Diana's, and he whispered, "Help me." She blinked. "What?" "I want to kneel." "Hajun." "I haven't since the accident. Not once. Not because I can't, but because I wouldn't." Tears welled in her eyes. She rose gently, circled to him, and helped guide him down, slowly, carefully, from the chair to the earth. It wasn't graceful, it wasn't clean, but when he finally rested on his knees, legs curled beneath him awkwardly, back trembling from the strain, it was holy. Diana knelt beside him. Tears fell silently. Then Hajun bowed his head, and for the first time in years, he prayed, "God, I hated you. I blamed you. I cursed you with silence, but you never left. And tonight, I give you what I never gave, my knees, my pride, my heart." Later, they sat side by side on the garden bench, wrapped in a quiet that felt more real than any celebration. Diana reached over and brushed his hand with hers. "You knelt," she said softly. "I didn't fall," he whispered. "No," she smiled. "You rose." An hour later, Ha-jun rolls back inside the house. The light above the bookshelf flicks on. He passes the Bible he once kept as decoration. He picks it up, opens it, not to study, to live. The man who once couldn't walk was now a man who stood in every way that mattered. The air smelled different out here, cleaner, like honesty. The narrow, winding road led to a quiet Hanok-style retreat tucked deep in South Korea's countryside, surrounded by rice fields, low stone walls, and golden hills rolling into the horizon. There were no towers, no investors, no boardrooms, just sky, and them. Diana parked the van beneath a grove of persimmon trees and turned off the engine. Ha-jun stared out the window for a long moment before speaking. "This doesn't look accessible." Diana grinned, unbuckling her seatbelt. "I called ahead. There's a ramp in the back, wide doors, and the shower's wheelchair-friendly. Stop trying to find a reason to escape. He turned to her with a crooked smirk. I wasn't. She raised a brow. I just didn't know you could drive. I'm divorced, she said, hopping out. I can drive, build furniture, budget in 4 currencies, and cut hair in a blackout. Let's go. The hanok was peaceful. A single-level traditional house with paper sliding doors, wooden beams, and an open courtyard. No mirrors, no labels, no one calling him Chairman Han, just Hajun. And Diana, in slippers, rolled-up sleeves, and joy spilling from her laugh every time he made a sarcastic comment that failed to land. The first afternoon, she wheeled him to the edge of a small trail and challenged him to a race. Her on foot, him in his chair. Winner chooses the movie tonight, she said, stretching. That's unfair. You have working knees. He adjusted his wheels. Let's make it interesting. If I win, you have to cook. And if you win, she tilted her head, you have to pray before dinner. Out loud. He stared. Too late, she grinned. You're already rolling. That evening, they sat on the porch watching the sun set over the fields. The sky turned orange and coral, stretching long shadows across the wooden deck. Diana set down 2 bowls of rice and bulgogi. I'm only cooking because you cheated. You took a shortcut, he said, with mock outrage, and tripped. You whacked me with your wheel. Proof I'm still dangerous. She laughed and handed him chopsticks. Be dangerous over dinner. After they ate, she cleared the dishes while he stayed outside, soaking in the last light of the day. She returned with 2 cups of barley tea. He took one and whispered, I forgot what quiet joy feels like. She leaned on the railing beside him. It's still joy, she said. Just grown up now. No fireworks. Just peace. He was quiet for a long time. Then softly, even if I never walk again, I'm already standing again. Because of you. Diana's throat caught. She turned to face him, one hand resting on the arm of his chair. Don't say that like it's my doing, she whispered. God rebuilt you. I'm just the woman who got a front row seat. He looked up at her. Then you're the most blessed witness in history. They sat there until the stars came out. No music playing, no phones buzzing. Just the sound of wind through grass, and 2 healed hearts learning how to rest beside each other. Later that night, Diana helped him into bed, her movements slow, practiced. They weren't sharing a room. They both knew better. Boundaries mattered, but intimacy didn't need a bed. It lived in the way she tucked the blanket under his arm and whispered, Call me if you need anything. He nodded. Even if I just miss you? She smiled, especially then. Diana sat alone on the patio wrapped in a blanket, sipping tea. She opened her prayer journal and wrote, Lord, he's smiling again. Thank you. I don't know what's ahead, but I trust you'll walk it with us, even if it's just him and the chair and you. He lost everything that made him appear strong and still found the woman who saw him as a man worth loving. The rain came softly one night, not the angry kind that threatened to drown, but the healing kind that washed things clean. They were still at the countryside retreat. The field shimmered silver under the drizzle. The world felt far away, muted, mercifully small. Inside, the hanok glowed with lamplight. 2 cups of tea steamed on the floor table. Diana sat cross-legged, wrapped in a cream shawl, her Bible open beside her. Hajun sat opposite. The air between them was calm, but heavy, not with tension, with truth. Hajun had been watching her all evening, the way she traced her fingers across scripture, the way her lips moved in silent thought, the way peace seemed to anchor her, even when she didn't speak. He envied it. He respected it. He needed it. Finally, he said quietly, "You always read before bed." She smiled faintly. "It's how I breathe." He tilted his head. "You think God hears everything you say?" "I know he does." "What about the things you don't say?" Her smile faded. "He hears those louder." They were quiet again. Then Diana closed the Bible softly and looked up. There was something in her eyes tonight, something unguarded, trembling between strength and surrender. "I've never told you my full story," she said. Ha-Jun leaned forward slightly. "You don't have to." "I want to." He nodded once. "Then tell me." Her voice was soft but steady. "I married young, 19. Church wedding. Big smile, big promises. Everyone said we'd be the example of faith and family." She exhaled. "And we were on the outside, but behind the front door it was control. Subtle at first, then constant. Every outfit, every friend, every opinion had to pass inspection. For 20 years, I prayed for God to fix it." Her throat tightened. "I kept thinking if I just loved harder, he'd change." Ha-Jun's chest ached at her words. "One night," she continued, "he told me I was the reason he was miserable, that God must have punished him by giving him me." Tears slipped down her cheeks. "That's when I realized the person who preached grace to others had never shown any to me." Ha-Jun's hands tightened. "So I left," she whispered, "with nothing, not even closure. I thought leaving meant freedom, but it took years to stop walking like I was apologizing for existing." Her eyes glistened. "That's why I came to Korea. I told God I just wanted to live again, laugh again. Love wasn't even on the list." Ha-Jun's breath hitched. "And yet, here you are." She gave a trembling laugh. "Here I am." He didn't speak for a long time. His throat burned. Then, quietly, he said, "My turn." Diana wiped her tears, nodding. He looked down at his hands, the faint scars on his wrists visible in the lamplight. "I told you the accident broke my spine. That's only half the truth." She froze. "Ha-Jun." His voice was calm, but each word carried the weight of years. After the crash, the doctor said recovery was possible, but progress was slow. I thought my wife's patience would buy me time. Instead, she left. He swallowed. A month after that, I tried to end it. Her eyes widened. "I didn't want to die," he whispered. "I just wanted the noise to stop. The pity. The endless why me." I wrote a note. Halfway through, I stopped writing because I realized it didn't matter who found it. Diana covered her mouth. Tears spilled silently. "But when I woke up in the hospital," he continued, "the first thing I heard was a nurse praying for me. Out loud. She didn't even know me. She just said, 'God, don't let him go before he sees what you're doing.'" He blinked hard. "I didn't believe her. Not then. But now." He looked at her. "I think she was praying for this moment." Diana moved without thinking, crossed the small floor space and knelt beside his chair. Her hand reached for his face, trembling as her fingers brushed his cheek. They didn't kiss. They didn't need to. It was something holier. Two wounds, touching. Two survivors, breathing in the same grace. Ha-Jun covered her hand with his. "You make me feel alive again." Her voice broke. "That's not me, Ha-Jun. That's God breathing through both of us." He nodded slowly. "Then let him stay." She reached for the Bible on the table, flipping it open to Psalm 147, verse 3. She read aloud, her voice shaking. "He heals the brokenhearted and binds up their wounds." Then she looked at him. "Let's pray." He hesitated, then nodded. She placed both hands on his. "You start." He exhaled. I don't know how anymore." "Yes, you do," she whispered. "Just talk." The rain deepened outside. Thunder murmured somewhere distant. Hajun closed his eyes. His voice was low, fragile, sincere. God, you know I stopped believing you were good. I blamed you for the pain you tried to heal. But thank you for not giving up on me, for sending her when I couldn't even ask for help, for proving that broken things can still hold glory. His voice cracked. Diana's tears fell freely now. She added softly, "And thank you, Father, for reminding us that love isn't the absence of pain, but the proof that healing is possible." They both fell silent. The candle flickered between them, flame steady, unwavering. Then, without a word, Diana began to hum, a hymn, "Great is thy faithfulness." Her voice was low and full, trembling but pure. Hajun joined in quietly, off-key, broken, real. And somewhere between their tears and that song, the room became a sanctuary. The rain stopped. The moon broke through the clouds. Hajun leaned back, face wet, eyes red but shining. He looked at her and whispered, "I didn't think worship could sound like this." Diana smiled through tears. It does when two wounds touch. In the stillness of that night, love became worship, and worship became healing. The morning mist clung to the garden like a veil. The sun had not yet broken the horizon, but light was coming. Faint, gentle, golden. Dinah stood in the doorway, wrapped in a soft gray shawl, watching Hajun down by the prayer garden. He was already awake, already waiting. A candle flickered beside him. This morning, something was different. There was peace around him now, not ache. He looked lighter, freer, like a man who'd made peace with both heaven and earth. "Couldn't sleep again?" she teased softly, walking toward him. Hajun smiled, his voice warm. "Not insomnia this time. Expectation." She laughed lightly. "What are you expecting, Mr. Han?" He looked at her with a knowing glint. "You'll see." Diana sat on the bench beside him. The air smelled faintly of dew and pine. A bird sang in the distance, unhurried. He looked toward the small pond ahead, where cherry blossoms drifted like tiny boats. "Do you remember," he began quietly, "when you told me that God didn't abandon me, that the enemy attacked?" She nodded, watching him. "That night, I told myself if God ever showed me mercy again, I'd live like I believed it." Her brow softened. "And you have." He shook his head gently. "Not completely. There's one more thing I need to do." She frowned slightly. "What thing?" He turned his wheelchair slightly to face her, and from the pocket of his coat, he pulled out a small velvet box. Diana froze. Her breath caught. Her hand flew to her mouth. Hajun's voice trembled, not from fear, from reverence. "I bought this ring a long time ago," he said, "for a version of me that didn't understand grace yet. Back then, I thought love was a transaction. I gave, people took. And when the world broke me, I believed the story was over." He exhaled, eyes glistening. "But then you walked into my silence, and you didn't try to fix me. You just stayed long enough for God to do it." Diana's eyes filled with tears. He opened the box slowly. Inside was a simple gold band, unadorned, unpretentious, but breathtaking in its quiet elegance. "I can't walk to you," he whispered, "but I've never felt closer to standing in my life." Tears spilled down her face. He reached for her hand, holding it gently between both of his. "Diana," he said softly, voice breaking, "God didn't heal my legs. He healed my life. And he used you." A tear slipped down his cheek, falling onto their joined hands. "You were the answer to prayers I stopped praying," he said. "The proof that love doesn't need perfection, just faith. So if you'll have me, Not as a project, not as a title, not as a miracle, but as the man God rebuilt from ashes. He took a shaky breath. Will you marry me? Diana's lips trembled. For a moment she couldn't speak. The tears came faster, but they weren't the broken kind this time. They were holy. She cupped his face with trembling hands, her voice barely above a whisper. Yes! 1,000 times. Yes. Hajun's eyes closed, a single tear slipping free. Above them, the morning light broke through the clouds, and as if God himself had been waiting for this exact moment. A white dove descended from the nearby roof, landing gracefully on the garden wall. They both froze, watching it in stunned silence. Ha-jun exhaled a laugh, shaking his head. Even heaven's showing off now. Diana laughed through her tears. God always does. He slipped the ring onto her finger with trembling hands. Then he looked up at her and whispered, "Now I can finally say it. I'm home." She bent down and kissed his forehead gently. "Welcome home," she murmured. Later that morning, Min-sik stood on the porch, pretending to check his phone, but really wiping his eyes. When they rolled up the path together, her walking beside him, their hands intertwined, he smiled wide and called out, "About time." Ha-jun grinned. "You're not invited to the honeymoon." Min-sik chuckled. "Wouldn't survive it anyway." Diana laughed. "He's right." That evening, the sun dipped low behind the hills. Ha-jun and Diana sat under the willow tree where everything had changed between them. He held her hand. She rested her head on his shoulder. No words, no plans, no fear, just gratitude. He whispered quietly, "Every pain led here." She nodded. "Every prayer, too." The dove flew overhead again, disappearing into the clouds as if carrying their vows straight to heaven. He couldn't walk down an aisle, so God brought heaven to meet him where he knelt. The sun was beginning its slow descent over the city of Seoul, bathing the hillside chapel in golden light. Perched just beyond the edge of the city, high enough to see the skyline, low enough to feel the earth beneath your feet. The small white church stood like a promise. Simple, quiet, sacred. Inside, the air smelled of lilies. Soft piano music drifted from the old keys of a wooden upright, and the murmurs of waiting guests filled the stone archways. No press, no paparazzi, just people who mattered, people who had seen brokenness and witnessed healing. Min-sik stood near the altar in a dark suit, hair smoothed back, expression tight as he checked his watch for the 5th time in 2 minutes. "She's not late," Ha-jun said from his wheelchair beside him, wearing a tailored black tuxedo with a white boutonniere and a calm smile. Min-sik grunted. "You don't know that." "I know her." That was all he had to say. Outside, Diana stood beneath the arched entrance of the chapel. The hem of her ivory dress caught a breeze, fluttering slightly. Her curls were pinned half up, small white blossoms tucked into the crown. She looked radiant, not just beautiful, eternal. The woman who once whispered prayers on the floor of a motel room was now standing in the fullness of God's restoration. She clutched her bouquet tightly and whispered one last prayer. "Thank you, God, for showing me love didn't die with my past. Thank you for teaching me that faith waits, but it doesn't forget. Thank you for giving me him." The doors opened. Everyone stood. Diana walked down the aisle slowly, eyes never leaving Ha-jun, who watched her like she was the first thing he'd ever truly seen. His hands trembled slightly, not from nerves, but from the sheer weight of gratitude. He had once begged for death. Now he was watching the woman who taught him how to live, walk into a forever they had both stopped believing in. At the altar, Min-sik stepped aside. The officiant, A kind older pastor who had prayed with Hajun months ago smiled at them both. Today, he said, is not about a fairy tale. This is not the story of two perfect people. This is the story of a faithful God who turns ashes into beauty and sorrow into joy. He looked at Diana. You may speak your vows. She turned to Hajun. Her voice shook, but she didn't look away. I never thought I'd wear this dress again, she whispered. Not after the first time, when love made me smaller than I was meant to be. Tears welled in her eyes. But then I met you, and you didn't ask me to shrink. You asked me to stand, and you showed me that love doesn't erase scars. It holds them. It honors them. It says, even here, you are worthy. She placed a hand gently over his heart. And now I vow to hold your heart the way you held mine, gently, fiercely, faithfully, for as long as God gives us breath. Hajun was already crying, and when he spoke, his voice cracked with every word. I didn't think I'd live to see this day, he said softly. I thought I lost everything when I lost my legs, but then you reminded me that standing has nothing to do with feet. He looked at her with tear-glossed eyes. You saw me when I didn't see myself. You prayed for me when I cursed the sky. You fought for me when I had nothing left. And you didn't try to carry me. You walked beside me. He drew a shaking breath. And I vow to spend the rest of my life doing the same for you. The ring was placed. The prayer was spoken. And when the pastor said, you may kiss your bride, Hajun pulled her gently down to him, and their lips met in the kind of kiss that speaks not of passion alone, but of purpose. It wasn't the fireworks that made people cry. It was the stillness that followed, the reverence, the holiness. 1 year later, the ribbon was cut on a wide modern building in the heart of Seoul, part rehabilitation center, part community hub, the Hope and Honor Foundation, a place for disabled individuals, widows, and the emotionally wounded to find support, therapy, employment training, and home. At the heart of it all, Diana and Hajun, co-founders, co-healers, and at the entrance, etched into a brass plaque near the sliding doors, were the words, He gave everything, and God gave him love. That evening, as families laughed in the courtyard and kids played beneath a canopy of lights, Dinah and Hajun sat together near the fountain. She leaned her head on his shoulder. He held her hand. No press, no platform, just peace. They didn't rewrite their past. They just let God write the ending. 6 months later, the rehabilitation wing of the Hope and Honor Foundation was quiet that morning. The lights were dim. The courtyard breeze carried the scent of hydrangeas and sandalwood. Diana stood alone in the therapy room, arms crossed, Bible in hand. She wasn't here to watch progress. She was here to believe for the impossible. Ha-jun had been working hard, not because he expected a miracle, but because he had peace even if it didn't come. But Diana, she had faith, and today, something in her spirit told her, he will stand. He entered quietly, wearing soft training pants, sneakers, and a humble smile. The therapists weren't with him, just Minsik and a cane. Where are they? Diana asked gently. I told them I needed to do this with you, Ha-jun said. She turned fully. You ready? He nodded. I'm not afraid to try anymore. She walked toward him and took his hand. I've prayed, she whispered, not just for you to walk again, but for it to be God's moment, not man's. He smiled. Then let's give it back to him. Minsik helped steady him. Ha-jun braced himself. His body trembled. For years, he had felt less than. But today, he felt something else rising in him. Not adrenaline, not ego, faith. He drew in a breath and slowly, impossibly, stood. He didn't wobble, didn't collapse. He just stood, on both feet. Tears filled Diana's eyes. "Oh my God," she breathed. "Oh my God." Hajun looked down at his own legs, then up at her. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. She was already crying, covering her mouth with both hands. He stepped forward. Just one step, then another. Each movement was trembling, but real. By the time he reached her, Diana could no longer hold it in. She threw her arms around his neck and sobbed into his chest. Ha-Jun held her, standing. No chair, no wheels, just worship. "I told you I didn't need this," he whispered toward heaven, "but you gave it anyway." Diana pulled back, cupping his face. "I always believed God wasn't finished with your legs," she whispered. "And I believed he was," he said through tears. "But now I know. He was just waiting for me to believe again." Later that week, the news quietly spread among the staff. The chairman walked into the boardroom unannounced. Minsik cried. The investors stared in stunned silence. But Hajun didn't boast. He simply said, "God gave me a new life before he gave me new legs. Walking again is just a reminder of the mercy I already lived." He knelt in faith and rose in glory. The end. Until next time, keep believing in the grace that defies all odds.